The morning sunlight poured through the glass walls of Lex Tech Innovations, one of New York's fastest-growing tech startups. Inside the 28th floor corner office, Ethan Cole, 34, tall, confident, and sharply dressed in a navy blue suit, leaned back in his chair, sipping espresso as he scrolled through his phone. His assistant, Maya, stood by the door, holding a stack of wedding invitations wrapped in gold foil. "Sir, these are the last batch of invites. Should we send one to your ex-wife?" she asked carefully, eyes flicking up to gauge his reaction. Ethan's lips curled into a smirk. "Oh, definitely. Send her one first." Maya hesitated. "You're sure? I mean, it might be uncomfortable." Ethan chuckled, his tone dripping with arrogance. "That's the point, Maya. Let her see what she lost. Let her see what real success looks like." He turned toward the floor-to-ceiling window, looking down at the skyline. 3 years ago, he'd been broke, a programmer chasing investors. And she, Clara Monroe, his ex-wife, had been there from the start. The lawyer who had helped him write contracts, pitch deals, and even sold her jewelry to fund his startup's first year. But when the company began to fail, arguments replaced affection. He'd blamed her for his struggles. He'd told her she was holding him back. And one cold February night, after a brutal argument about money and his ambition, he'd walked out. Now, years later, Lex Tech was valued at $800 million. Ethan had built an empire and was about to marry Vivian Hart, the glamorous daughter of a billionaire venture capitalist. He wanted Clara there, not because he missed her, at least that's what he told himself, but because he wanted her to see him win. Meanwhile, across town, in a small but cozy brownstone apartment in Brooklyn, Clara Monroe, 32, slipped into a navy pantsuit, her long curls pulled into a neat bun. The early morning chaos of laughter echoed from the living room. 3 little voices shouted in unison, "Mommy, we want pancakes." Clara smiled. "You'll get pancakes after you brush your teeth, mister." The triplets, Eli, Emma, and Ethan Jr., identical except for their personalities, raced down the hallway. Their curly hair bounced with every step. She knelt to tie Eli's shoes and looked at their faces. Every time she did, her heart tightened. They had his eyes, the same deep brown that once made her fall in love. She'd never told him. When she left Ethan, she was 2 months pregnant. She had found out a week after their divorce was finalized. She'd thought of calling him, but pride, pain, and fear kept her silent. So she raised them alone, juggling court cases by day, sleepless nights by night, and somehow built a small law firm of her own. Life wasn't glamorous, but it was peaceful. Until that morning. When she opened her mailbox, there it was, a golden envelope embossed with the letters ENV. Her heart froze. "Vivian Hart and Ethan Cole invite you to celebrate their union." She read it twice, each word cutting deeper. Her friend and assistant, Naomi, walked in, holding coffee. "What's that?" Clara forced a smile. "An invitation to a joke." Naomi frowned. "Is that?" "Yes. My ex-husband is getting married." Naomi snatched the card, read it, and groaned. "Girl, this man got nerve. After everything you did for him." Clara sighed, setting the invitation on the table. "Let him have his perfect day. I've got more important things to focus on, like keeping my clients out of jail." But as she tucked the invitation under a pile of paperwork, her mind whispered a thought she didn't want to admit. Why me? Why invite me? 2 weeks later, Ethan adjusted his cufflinks as he walked through the rehearsal venue. A lavish Manhattan hotel ballroom shimmering with chandeliers and white roses. Cameras flashed, guests mingled, and Vivian glided toward him in her diamond-studded gown. "You look nervous," she teased. Ethan smiled faintly. "Just making sure everything's perfect." But the truth? He was thinking about the invitation. Would Clara come? Back in Brooklyn, Naomi barged into Clara's office, excitement glowing on her face. "You're not gonna believe who called. The Rolls-Royce dealership you helped last year with that legal dispute? They're offering you a courtesy car for a week. Black Phantom, brand new." Clara blinked. "Why would they do that?" Naomi grinned. "Because they want publicity, and your firm's name on their client list brings them credibility. You should use it." Clara laughed. "What am I supposed to do with a Rolls-Royce for a week? Park it outside the courthouse. Then Naomi held up the golden invitation she'd secretly saved. Or drive it to a certain wedding. Clara froze. Naomi leaned closer. Come on, Clara. Don't do it for him. Do it for you. Let them see the woman you became. You don't need revenge, just presence. Clara hesitated. But a part of her, the part that had been humiliated and discarded, began to awaken. The day of the wedding. The sun bathed Manhattan in gold as luxury cars lined the hotel entrance. Paparazzi buzzed like bees. Vivian, radiant in a pearl gown, smiled for the cameras. Then a sudden hush. A sleek black Rolls-Royce Phantom glided to the entrance. The door opened slowly. A woman stepped out, tall, elegant, glowing in a white silk dress. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Is that Clara Monroe? Someone whispered. Her heels clicked on the marble as she walked, poised and powerful. Behind her, a nanny stepped out, holding the hands of 3 identical children, each dressed in cream suits and bows. The guests stared, murmuring in shock. Vivian's smile faltered. Ethan's jaw clenched. The woman he'd called poor, forgotten, irrelevant, had just arrived in the kind of luxury even his billionaire fiancé envied. Inside the ballroom, Clara's entrance silenced the crowd. Her eyes met Ethan's, and for a moment time stopped. He saw it. The strength in her, the fire, the beauty he'd taken for granted. And then the triplets turned to look at him. 3 pairs of brown eyes. 3 little faces that looked exactly like his. Ethan's blood ran cold. Vivian noticed. What's wrong? He couldn't answer. Because for the first time in years, Ethan Cole felt powerless. The grand ballroom of the St. Regis Hotel in Manhattan shimmered with crystal chandeliers and 1,000 whispers. Every guest was dressed to perfection, but every eye was glued to one woman. Clara Monroe. She moved through the room like a queen returning to reclaim her throne. Her white silk dress hugged her curves elegantly, her curls cascading over one shoulder, and the faintest confident smile lingered on her lips. But Ethan wasn't smiling. He stood at the altar, frozen, watching her approach with the calm of someone who knew exactly what she was doing. His fiancée, Vivian Hart, gripped his arm tightly, sensing the shift in his posture. Who is that? Vivian whispered sharply. Ethan swallowed. My ex-wife. Vivian's eyes widened. You invited her? Ethan forced a smirk. It was supposed to be funny. Vivian didn't smile. Well, it's not funny anymore. The photographer's camera flashed toward the entrance again. The triplets stood near Clara's side, calm, polite, but curious. Their presence alone stirred a hum through the guests. Those kids, they look just like Ethan, someone whispered near the front. The words spread like wildfire. Clara takes her seat. Clara sat gracefully in the second row. She could feel Ethan's gaze burning into her back, but she refused to turn. Naomi, her loyal friend, leaned over. Girl, this is better than a courtroom drama, she whispered. Clara kept her chin up. I didn't come to cause a scene. I came to show I'm fine. Naomi smirked. Honey, you didn't show you're fine. You showed you're untouchable. But even as Clara smiled politely at the murmuring crowd, her heart pounded. Seeing Ethan again after 3 years, it reopened every wound she thought had healed. He looked the same, maybe even sharper, his confidence almost cruel. But there was confusion in his eyes now, the kind that made him look smaller than she remembered. The ceremony begins. The officiant's voice echoed. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today. Ethan tried to focus on Vivian's trembling hands, on the vows he'd rehearsed, on the cameras flashing. But his mind betrayed him. Every time he blinked, he saw Clara's face, calm, unreadable, framed by the soft light. And then his gaze drifted again to the triplets. 3 children, all with his exact features. He clenched his jaw, forcing himself to look away. Vivian noticed. What are you staring at? She whispered. Nothing, Ethan lied. But his pulse raced. The reception. When the vows ended. And champagne glasses clinked, the ballroom filled with laughter and music. Vivian basked in attention, but Ethan couldn't escape the tension coiling in his chest. He walked toward the bar, and there she was. Clara. Alone for the first time, sipping from a crystal glass, her gaze distant. He hesitated, then approached. Clara, he said quietly. She turned, her expression perfectly neutral. Ethan, did you really have to come? She smiled faintly. You invited me. I didn't think you'd actually show up. I didn't think you'd still be the kind of man who underestimates me. He exhaled slowly. Always had a comeback, didn't you? Only when provoked. Their eyes locked. Years of pain, pride, and unspoken love flashing between them. The question he couldn't avoid. He glanced at the triplets across the room, laughing with Naomi. They yours? He asked, voice low. Clara tilted her head. Of course. They're my world. He pressed. Who's the father? She smiled, the kind of smile that hides 1,000 truths. Does it matter? Yes, he said too quickly. For a moment, the mask slipped from his face, guilt, fear, curiosity blending together. Clara, are they? She interrupted, voice soft but steady. You gave up the right to ask that question the day you walked out. His throat tightened. So they are mine. Clara didn't answer. She just turned toward the children again, her eyes misty. Then she said, Ethan, this isn't about you anymore. I came here because I wanted to see if I could stand in front of my past, and not break. And I didn't. Vivian approaches. Vivian's voice sliced through the tension. Well, what a touching reunion. Clara turned slowly, offering a calm smile. Vivian. Congratulations. Vivian crossed her arms. Thank you. I must admit, you've caused quite the distraction. I didn't mean to. Oh, I think you did. But it's fine. Vivian's tone turned sharp. Because you may have come in a Rolls-Royce, but I came here with him. She tightened her hold on Ethan's arm. Clara's smile didn't fade. You're right. And I truly hope he gives you everything he couldn't give me. Ethan's jaw clenched, but Clara continued. Respect. Patience. Love that doesn't vanish when things get hard. Vivian stiffened. The silence that followed was louder than any insult. Then Clara stepped back, gracefully lifting her purse. Enjoy your evening. I have to get my children home. She turned and walked away, her heels clicking on marble, her head high. The triplets ran toward her, their laughter cutting through the tension like sunlight. Ethan watched them go, his chest heavy. For the first time, the applause, the luxury, the cameras, none of it meant anything. Because somewhere between ambition and arrogance, he'd lost the only woman who ever believed in him, and the children he never knew existed. The wedding reception had barely ended when the whispers began to spread across Manhattan's social circles like wildfire. Ethan Cole's ex-wife showed up in a Rolls-Royce. She had triplets, and they looked exactly like him. Within hours, social media was ablaze with photos from the event. Clara Monroe stepping out of the Phantom, her children beside her, her head held high. Every news blog that covered elite New York weddings had picked up the story. At LexTech headquarters, the PR team scrambled to contain the buzz. But Ethan wasn't at the office. He was sitting in his penthouse at Central Park Tower, staring at a photo on his phone. A blurry shot of Clara walking away from the ballroom, her hand clutching a little boy's. The resemblance was undeniable. The boy had his dimples, his eyes, his posture. He ran a hand through his hair, pacing restlessly. Vivian, his new wife of less than 24 hours, stood by the window in a silk robe, glaring at him. So what's your excuse, Ethan? She demanded. He didn't look up. Excuse for what? Vivian scoffed. Don't play dumb. The entire internet is talking about how your ex-wife showed up at our wedding with 3 kids that look like your clones. Ethan finally met her gaze. They're not my clones. Vivian folded her arms. Then prove it. Ethan sighed. You want me to go demand a DNA test in front of the media? Is that what you want? Vivian stepped closer. I want you to tell me the truth. Did you ever get her pregnant before you divorced? His silence was her answer. Vivian turned away, shaking her head. Unbelievable. You said you two were over long before your company took off. We were, Ethan replied quietly. But life was complicated back then. Vivian's laugh was bitter. Complicated? You left a woman who believed in you for me. And now she's the one walking around like a queen while I look like the second choice. That's not what this is, Ethan snapped. Vivian turned ice cold. Then fix it, Ethan. Because if the media keeps comparing me to her, I'll make sure this marriage doesn't last longer than the champagne bubbles from yesterday." She stormed out of the room, leaving him staring at the skyline. For the first time since he'd become rich, Ethan realized all his success, his power, his new marriage felt hollow, because deep down a truth was clawing at him. He had to know if those kids were his. Clara's morning after. Across town in Brooklyn, Clara's morning was chaos. Pancake batter on the counter, 3 kids running around, and her phone buzzing nonstop. Naomi barged in with a grin and a newspaper in hand. "Congratulations, superstar. You're officially trending." Clara groaned. "Oh no. What now?" Naomi slapped the paper on the table. The headline read, "Ethan Cole's ex-wife stuns guests at his wedding. Arrives in Rolls-Royce with triplets." Clara buried her face in her hands. "This is a nightmare." Naomi laughed. "No, this is poetic justice. Look at you. All these reporters calling you mysterious, graceful, powerful." "I don't want to be famous," Clara interrupted. "I just wanted to prove I wasn't broken." "Mission accomplished," Naomi said with a smirk. "But speaking of broken, someone's downstairs asking for you." Clara frowned. "Who? Ethan Cole?" Clara froze. Her heart skipped a beat. "He's here." Naomi nodded. "And he looks like a man who hasn't slept." Clara exhaled slowly. "All right. Keep the kids in the kitchen." Confrontation. When Clara opened the door, Ethan stood on the steps, still in yesterday's suit, tie undone, eyes tired. For a moment neither spoke. "May I come in?" he asked softly. She hesitated. "You came all the way to Brooklyn. You might as well." He stepped inside, glancing around the apartment. Warm, filled with children's drawings, books, and the faint smell of coffee. "Nice place," he said, trying to sound casual. "It's home," she replied. He turned to her. "Clara, are they mine?" She crossed her arms. "You've asked that before. And you never answered." Clara's expression softened, but her voice stayed firm. "Because it doesn't matter, Ethan. You made your choice years ago. I raised them without you." Ethan stepped closer. "It matters to me. I deserve to know." Clara's eyes flashed. "You deserve? You walked out when I begged you to stay. You said I was holding you back, that my dreams didn't matter. You don't get to show up now and talk about what you deserve." Ethan's voice broke slightly. "Clara, I was scared. I was failing, and I thought success would fix everything." She looked at him, her eyes shimmering with restrained pain. "And did it?" He didn't answer. Clara sighed, turning away. "They're your children, Ethan. All 3. I found out I was pregnant after the divorce. I wanted to tell you, but I couldn't stand the thought of you using them as proof you were right. That you could leave and still get everything." Ethan stood frozen. His throat tightened. "You should have told me. You should have stayed," she whispered. The silence that followed was thick with years of regret. Then a small voice broke it. "Mommy." They both turned. Standing in the doorway was little Eli, clutching a stuffed bear. "Who's that man?" he asked curiously. Clara knelt, brushing Eli's hair gently. "He's an old friend of Mommy's." Ethan swallowed hard. "Hey buddy," he said softly. "You like robots?" Eli's eyes lit up. "I love robots." Ethan smiled faintly. "Me too." Clara watched, torn between anger and the ache in her heart. Seeing Ethan kneel beside his son, felt surreal. An unwelcome guest. Before the moment could settle, a car pulled up outside. Clara's expression changed instantly. Through the window, she saw Vivian step out, flawless in designer sunglasses and a cream coat. "Oh no," Clara muttered. Vivian walked straight up the stairs, heels clicking sharply. She didn't even knock. "So this is where you been hiding?" Ethan turned. "Vivian, save it," she snapped. Her gaze flicked toward Eli. "And these must be the famous triplets. How adorable." Clara's tone was calm but cold. "Vivian, this isn't the time." Vivian smirked. "Oh, I think it's exactly the time. You see, I'm married to this man now, and I'd like to know whether I married a husband or a walking scandal." Clara's jaw clenched. "You're not here for answers. You're here for drama." Vivian tilted her head. "Maybe. Or maybe I just want to meet the woman who thought she could upstage me on my wedding day. Clara laughed softly. Upstage you? I didn't even plan to go until the last minute. I came to show my children that confidence doesn't need revenge. Vivian's smirk faltered. Then Ethan stepped between them. Vivian, enough. You shouldn't have come here. Vivian stared at him. So you're defending her now? I'm asking you to leave before you embarrass yourself, he said firmly. Her lips trembled with fury. You know what, Ethan? Maybe you two deserve each other. She turned and stormed out, slamming the door behind her. The room fell silent again. Clara rubbed her forehead. You just made things worse for yourself. Ethan sighed. She was never supposed to show up. Clara's tone softened. None of this was supposed to happen. A quiet confession. After putting the kids to bed, Clara sat with Ethan in the dimly lit living room. She's not going to forgive you easily, Clara said quietly. I don't think I care, he admitted. Not right now. Clara frowned. That's dangerous talk. He turned to her, eyes filled with emotion. You don't understand. The moment I saw those kids, something in me broke. Clara, I missed everything. Their first steps, their first words. I spent years chasing a future that already existed right here. Clara looked away. You're not the man I remember. That man was selfish. Ethan nodded slowly. Maybe I was. But I'm trying to change. I just don't know where to start. She met his eyes again. Start by showing up. Not with money or gifts, just presence. He smiled faintly. Can I come by tomorrow? She hesitated. We'll see. When he left, the silence of the apartment felt heavy but different. Like the start of something unresolved. Clara stood by the window, watching his car disappear into the night. She whispered softly, Don't break their hearts like you broke mine. Meanwhile, Vivian sat in her luxury penthouse, glass of wine in hand, eyes blazing with rage. She dialed a number. Hello? A voice answered. It's Vivian Hartcole, she said coldly. I need a favor. I want everything you can find on Clara Monroe. Her firm, her clients, her finances, all of it. The man on the other end hesitated. May I ask why? Vivian's lips curved into a dangerous smile. Because no woman humiliates me and gets away with it. The next few days in New York moved like a storm. The gossip columns, podcasts, and business news outlets had turned one wedding into an ongoing soap opera. The tech tycoon, his ex-lawyer wife, and the triplets. From love to lawsuits. Inside Ethan Cole's shocking reunion. Every morning, Clara woke up to a new headline with her name splashed across it. Most twisted, exaggerated, or flat-out lies. She tried to ignore it. She focused on her clients, her children, and the cases stacked on her desk. But the world around her was beginning to shift, small things first, then larger ones. A longtime client suddenly canceled a contract. A legal partner postponed a meeting without rescheduling. And by the end of the week, her firm's phone line was unusually quiet. She didn't know it yet, but the storm had a name. Vivian Hartcole. Vivian's plan. In the glittering penthouse overlooking Central Park, Vivian sipped champagne as her friend and publicist, Lydia Shaw, flipped through a thick folder. Here's what we've got so far, Lydia said. Old pictures of Clara in front of a rundown law office, a few clients with small-time cases, and some financial records. Her firm's modest but clean, nothing scandalous. Vivian smirked. Then make it scandalous. Lydia blinked. How? Vivian turned from the window, her voice cool. You know how media works, Lydia. The truth doesn't need to be real. It just needs to be loud. She leaned closer. Find a way to leak a story that connects her firm to something illegal. Tax evasion, client bribery, anything. Pay someone if you have to. Then make sure every investor and corporate client in Manhattan sees it before she does. Lydia hesitated. Vivian, that's a dangerous move. What if Ethan? Vivian's voice turned sharp. Ethan doesn't need to know. He's too busy trying to play father of the year to those triplets. Her eyes glinted with bitterness. Clara Monroe humiliated me at my own wedding. Now I'll make sure she never sets foot in a courtroom again. The rumor breaks. 3 days later, Clara walked into her firm, her briefcase in one hand and coffee in the other. The receptionist looked pale. "Ma'am," she stammered, "you need to see this." Clara frowned, taking the tablet from her hand. A breaking news headline blared across the screen. Breaking. Attorney Clara Monroe under investigation for fraudulent client deals. Sources claim money laundering through Monroe Legal Group. Her heart dropped. What? That's insane. Naomi rushed out of her office, phone in hand. "Clara, don't panic. We're calling the network right now to demand a retraction." But what? Naomi hesitated. "It's everywhere. They're saying the DA might open a preliminary inquiry. Half our clients already called to pause their cases." Clara sat down slowly, her hand trembling. "Someone's behind this." Naomi's jaw tightened. "You think it's him?" Clara shook her head. "No. Ethan's arrogant, not cruel. This has Vivian written all over it." At LexTech, Ethan's phone buzzed relentlessly that afternoon. His PR manager stormed into his office. "Sir, we have a problem," she said. "Your ex-wife's firm is trending, and not in a good way. Reporters are connecting you to the story. They're saying she used your old startup contracts for illegal deals." Ethan's eyes narrowed. "That's ridiculous." "I know, sir, but the public doesn't. It's spreading fast." Ethan slammed his phone on the desk. "Get me the number for whoever published it." He didn't wait for a reply. He was already out the door. Confrontation number 2. Clara's office was chaotic when Ethan arrived. Papers scattered, phones ringing, Naomi arguing with reporters. When she saw him walk in, her expression darkened. "You shouldn't be here." "I came to help," he said quickly. "Help?" she repeated bitterly. "You helped enough the first time you left." Ethan took a step closer. "Clara, listen, I saw the article. Someone's framing you." She crossed her arms. "You think I don't know that? I think I know who's behind it." Her eyes met his, sharp and searching. "Vivian." He nodded grimly. "She's been paranoid since the wedding. She wanted me to fix your appearance. I didn't realize she'd go this far." Clara's voice cracked with restrained anger. "She's using her money and your name to ruin what I built from nothing." "I can fix this," he said. She laughed bitterly. "You can't fix this with an apology or a check, Ethan. This is my career." He looked at her, really looked, and for the first time he didn't see the woman he'd left behind. He saw a mother fighting for her dignity, a lawyer standing alone against the powerful, a flame that refused to be snuffed out. "I'll make it right," he said quietly, "even if it costs me everything." Vivian's discovery. Later that night, Vivian was at a high-profile charity gala when her phone buzzed with an alert. Ethan Cole seen entering ex-wife's office amid fraud allegations. She froze, reading the headline twice. Then she smiled darkly. So he still thinks he can play hero. But as she scrolled further, her smile faded. Ethan had given a public statement, short but powerful. "Clara Monroe is one of the most ethical attorneys I've ever worked with. Any rumors suggesting otherwise are false. LexTech Innovations will provide full transparency to clear her name." Vivian's champagne glass cracked under her tightening grip. He defended her. Her publicist tried to calm her. "Vivian, it's just PR." "No," she hissed. "It's loyalty." And in that moment, Vivian decided the war wasn't over. It was just beginning. Damage control. Over the next week, Ethan worked tirelessly behind the scenes. He hired private investigators, tracked the origin of the article, and used LexTech's PR network to demand retractions. He even held a press conference, declaring, "No false narrative will destroy the reputation of an honest woman." Public sympathy began shifting. The smear campaign started crumbling under scrutiny. Reporters traced the anonymous source back to a PR firm, owned by one of Vivian's shell companies. When Ethan confronted her, it was the first time his voice shook with true anger. "You tried to destroy her," he said, standing in their penthouse, eyes blazing. Vivian crossed her legs calmly. "I tried to protect our image. By lying. By neutralizing a threat." "She's not a threat. She's the mother of my children," he shouted. The words hung in the air. Vivian's expression faltered, shock, then betrayal, then fury. "You knew." Ethan stepped closer. "I found out last week. And for the first time in years, I feel like I finally know what matters. Vivian's eyes filled with venom. You're throwing away your future for her. No, he said softly. I'm saving my soul. He turned and walked out, leaving Vivian trembling, her empire of control beginning to crack. Clara's vindication. 2 weeks later, Clara stood outside the New York Supreme Court building, flanked by reporters. After a full investigation, the district attorney's office publicly cleared her name. The smear campaign was proven false, with evidence pointing back to a third-party PR firm. When reporters shouted questions, Clara stood tall and calm. I built my career on truth, she said. And no lie, no matter how loud, can erase that. The cameras flashed. The crowd applauded. And in that moment, she felt something she hadn't felt in years, peace. Naomi hugged her tight. You did it, boss. Clara smiled faintly. We did it. Then she looked up to see Ethan standing at the edge of the crowd, his eyes full of quiet pride. A quiet reunion. That evening, Ethan visited her office again. This time with no cameras, no reporters, no drama. The triplets were drawing in the corner while Clara sorted case files. Ethan approached her softly. You don't owe me forgiveness, but I owe you the truth. She looked up, wary but listening. I spent years chasing success because I thought love made me weak. But when I lost you, I realized success without peace is just noise. He hesitated, his voice low. I can't undo the past. But I can be here now. For them. For you if you'll let me. Clara studied him for a long moment. I don't need saving anymore, Ethan. But maybe they deserve a father. He smiled gently. Then let me start there. The triplets ran to him, laughing. Daddy, Daddy. The word hit him like lightning, both painful and healing at once. He knelt down, arms open, as the children hugged him tightly. For the first time, Ethan Cole, the man who had conquered Silicon Valley and lost his soul, felt human again. And behind him, Clara watched, her eyes misty. She didn't know what the future held. But one thing was clear. Vivian's war had failed. Truth had survived. And love, quiet, steady, reborn, had found its way back home. Meanwhile, Vivian sat alone in her penthouse, the lights of New York glittering below. Her phone buzzed with a single notification. LexTech board meeting, urgent. Ethan had called an emergency vote to remove her father's firm from the company's partnerships and dissolve her influence entirely. Vivian's jaw tightened as she stared out the window. This isn't over, Clara. You may have won today, but I always play the long game. Her reflection in the glass smiled back coldly, a promise of more chaos to come. New York shimmered beneath the late spring sun, bright, loud, and endlessly alive. But for Clara Monroe, the city finally felt quiet. 2 years had passed since the scandal that almost destroyed her. 2 years since the courtroom battles, the interviews, the whispers. 2 years since Ethan Cole, her ex-husband, the man who once broke her heart and later saved her name, had stood beside her against the lies. Life hadn't gone back to what it used to be. It had become something new. The new Clara. The morning light filtered through the wide windows of Monroe and Shaw Legal, the midtown law firm Clara now co-owned with her loyal friend Naomi. What started as a 2-room office had grown into a respected boutique firm handling corporate ethics and startup compliance cases. The exact kind of work that once fueled Ethan's empire. Clara had built her firm on a single principle. Truth has no price tag. Clients came from all over the state, drawn to her reputation as the woman who had survived a smear campaign and come back stronger. On her desk sat a photo frame, her triplets, now 6 years old, smiling in matching navy uniforms. She ran her thumb gently over the glass and smiled. Her heart still clenched sometimes when she thought of Ethan, but it no longer hurt. It simply reminded her of how far she'd come. Ethan's return. At 11 a.m., her assistant buzzed through the intercom. Ms. Monroe, Mr. Cole is here for his appointment. Clara froze mid-sentence. Send him in. The door opened and Ethan Cole walked in, older, calmer, dressed in a simple gray suit. Gone was the arrogant CEO with headlines chasing him. He had stepped down from LexTech a year ago after a board vote that shocked Wall Street. Now he ran Cole Innovations, a nonprofit that funded young tech entrepreneurs from disadvantaged backgrounds. a project he'd founded after reconciling with the part of himself that once worshipped greed. "Hey," he said softly. "Hey," she replied, standing up. "You look different." He smiled faintly. "You mean human?" "Something like that." They both laughed, a brief, unguarded sound that filled the room. The reason he came. Ethan placed a folder on her desk. "I came about the project we discussed last month, the Community Legal Tech Partnership. I think it's time." Clara flipped through the documents. He'd drawn up a plan to combine her firm's legal outreach with his nonprofit's resources, giving free legal access to small business owners and startups. "It's solid," she said. "I'll have Naomi review it, but I like the direction." He nodded. "I wasn't sure if you'd want to work with me again." She gave a half smile. "Ethan, we've survived worse." A silence lingered between them, not awkward, just full of things unsaid. He looked around her office, eyes landing on the photo of the triplets. "They've grown fast." "They're troublemakers," she said, smiling. "They ask about you all the time." He swallowed. "I see them every other weekend, but it's never enough." "They adore you," she said softly. "That's enough for now." Vivian's downfall. While Clara and Ethan quietly rebuilt their worlds, Vivian Hartcole's empire had collapsed. After the exposure of her smear campaign, the fallout was swift. Her father's media company withdrew funding from LexTech, investors abandoned her, and public sympathy vanished. She had left New York entirely. Rumors said she moved to Europe, trying to rebuild her reputation among the rich and disillusioned. Once, her name had been printed on every glossy magazine. Now it was whispered with pity and disdain. She had played her long game, but lost her board, her brand, and the man she'd tried to own. Still, in her absence, both Ethan and Clara had learned something profound. Some wars are only won when you stop fighting. A night of reflection. That evening, Clara attended a charity gala hosted by Ethan's foundation, not as a date, but as a partner in the project. The event was simple, elegant, full of young innovators who spoke passionately about change. When Ethan took the stage to give his speech, he glanced toward her briefly before speaking. "I used to believe success meant outsmarting the world. But real success," he paused, voice steady, "is when the people you've hurt can look at you and still wish you well." The audience applauded. Clara's eyes glistened. After the event, she found him by the balcony, looking out at the Manhattan skyline. "You meant that," she said quietly. He turned to her. "Every word." They stood in silence, the city alive beneath them, 1,000 lights, 1,000 possibilities. "I used to think forgiveness was weakness," she admitted. "But letting go of anger, it's the only way I survived." Ethan smiled faintly. "Then you're stronger than I'll ever be." She shook her head. "No, Ethan. You chose to change. That's strength too." He looked at her with something between gratitude and longing. "If I told you I still love you, would that ruin what we've rebuilt?" Clara's heart fluttered, but her answer came with peace. "Ethan, love doesn't always need a home. Sometimes, it just needs respect." He nodded slowly, the acceptance in his eyes both painful and freeing. 2 lives, 1 promise. In the months that followed, their professional partnership flourished. Their co-parenting became smoother. Their friendship, genuine, grounded, unromanticized, became the quiet bridge between what was and what could have been. On weekends, Ethan would take the triplets to Central Park, teaching them to ride bikes while Clara watched from a distance. Sometimes, he'd look up and catch her eye across the green lawns. She'd wave. He'd smile. That was enough. The last letter. On a rainy afternoon, almost a year later, Clara received a letter delivered by hand. It was from Ethan. Inside was a simple note and a small box. "Clara, I once invited you to a wedding to humiliate you. Today, I write this to honor you. Thank you for teaching me what real love looks like. Not the kind that demands, but the kind that endures. If I ever mattered at all, let this remind you that I never stopped believing in you. Ethan." Inside the box was a small silver keychain shaped like a Rolls-Royce, engraved with the words, "From the moment you arrived, you won." Clara laughed softly through tears. She placed the keychain beside the photo of their children. Her assistant peeked in. "You okay?" Clara wiped her eyes, smiling. I'm perfect. Because in that moment she realized she didn't need the fairy tale. She had her peace. She had her truth. She had herself. Epilogue. The gala 2 years later. Another spring. Another gala. This time, the triplets were old enough to attend. As the lights dimmed and the awards began, Ethan's foundation honored Monroe and Shaw Legal for their pro bono impact on small startups. When Clara walked on stage to accept the award, she saw Ethan clapping proudly from the crowd. Their eyes met briefly. He mouthed, "You did it." She smiled and replied silently, "We did." The audience rose to their feet. Not for a couple rekindled, but for two souls who had found grace after fire. And as Clara stood under the bright lights, she realized something beautiful. Sometimes, victory isn't about getting back what you lost. It's about never letting it break you in the first place. Broken heart, what did you think of Clara's choice? Was she right to stay independent? Or should she have given Ethan a second chance? Fire comment #Team Clara or #Team Ethan below. Sparkles, don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this one. Full of love, loss, and powerful redemption.